Okay, welcome back. So these are the contents to the low-backed modern chair. You have the two sides, and to the inside of them, there are rectangles that are there to help you glue on these, which are the struts. Then this is the backrest and the seat, and you do have sandpaper included. My suggestion is if you intend to use a clear coat or a really translucent stain or something, that you may want to actually use the sandpaper and sand any of the flat surfaces. You don't really need to do the sides, but that will help it to remove any discoloration from the cutting process. Like that will take off just a little bit of the singeing. The next step is to take one of the sides and your back, and you want to go ahead and put glue. I use tacky glue, by the way, and put glue on just one side at a time. This is the way to keep this from being too frustrating. So we're going to take this, we're going to place it at the angle in alignment with the front of what the chair will be. So like that. So if I look at this from the sides, you'll see that the back of the chair is pushed slightly forward. I can remove all of the bits of glue and so forth that are really important to remove if you're going to be doing any kind of finishing, and get this level. Now, my suggestion is to wait until that is nice and tacky before going to the next step. Now that that's had a chance to set up a little bit, go ahead and put your glue for the other side of the back, and you're just repeating the same way. When you do this, when this gets a little bit drier than it is right now, you want to kind of adjust it and make sure that it's going to be square and it's going to be even and everything. So this is still quite wet, and so I can't really do it as well yet. But before it's completely hardened, and before it's, or after it's a little tacky but not completely hardened, then you want to make sure that this is all nice and square before we go to put these on here. Okay, so once that is nice and dry, then you can go ahead, and you may want to use a pair of tweezers for this. You can put glue on either end of the struts, whichever, both ends. Actually, you can do at the same time. And put some glue on there. And then if you look inside, I have left marks here. I made marks for where this can be placed. And I need to hold that this way for you. And if we look in here, I am able to place the struts pretty much inside that rectangle, that small rectangle. And once I get those the way that I like, which is essentially just flush with the front, by the way. So if you're not able to see those rectangles very well, that's all that they were for. I want to go ahead and let this dry and check also to see if it's square again before it's completely hardened. And then what I will do is I will go ahead and place the ones on the back as well. The last step is where you place this seat slightly forward. The grain should go from back to front, and you want to place this just slightly forward so that there's a little bit more of a overhang in the front than in the back. It's not going to be obvious difference, but that's kind of how the design is supposed to be, is that it's just slightly forward, like so. Now, if you are going to just leave this plain, then you just place your glue here and here, and that's what you do. If you purchased some material to go on the chair, then what I can do is show you how to cover the chair. The first thing that I always do is I scooch my piece of wood or whatever it is that's being covered to the edge as far as possible, and I glue without really gluing in like these corners here. What I'm trying to do is reduce the amount of fabric that I'm actually having to deal with. And so I don't glue all the way into the corners because I'm going to cut that and trim it and everything to make it a little bit easier to deal with. But I'll start on one side like this with a thin amount. Then I'll go over here on this side, also not quite going into the corners. And I can kind of judge how much I want to trim off this way. And I can just sort of tamp that down. And then I come in and I like to trim as close as I can there. So I get an idea of how it's going to fit. And then as little bit of fabric as possible. See, I could actually cut a little more and make it match that side. So once those are dry enough, then I can come over here and I want to trim this just a little bit, trim out the corner, and I'm just removing fabric wherever I can, because see, when I go here, then all of this fabric is all bunched up, and I don't like that so much. So I like to remove as much as possible, just kind of snipping here and there. I don't have a real fancy way of doing this, but then I'm once again putting my glue in between here, and then I can press this over. So now I have kind of these little pointy things, and they're sticking out. There's still, you know, more fabric than I really want to deal with. But what you do here, and since this is kind of a rounded edge, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to look at this a little bit, see if I have this on straight. Tighten it. I don't like putting glue on the surface of it. So now what I can do is I can trim this out even more, the underneath part. I can trim more fabric, and I can get that as flat as possible, you know, really, you know, just I'm going to keep nipping at that until I get that nice and flat, because I'm going to go ahead then and glue this down, and I'm going to press it down really hard. Need more glue so that I can do that. And press that really hard. And that's because I want that as nice and flat as possible, because when I go and I do this to all of my corners, then I want it to be able to glue down onto the chair neatly. I don't want it to be, you know, hiked up on the side here too much, and then this one is another height and so forth. And so that's why I remove as much fabric as possible. And I might even go in here, you know, and kind of trim even more off of this if I find that I have too much before it's completely dry. And I may go in and actually trim some of this. So anyway, that's how I do it. And then I just go around, and of course I just complete it on the other side as well. So that's just a little tip if you wanted it. Thank you so much for your purchase.